Imagine you receive a moderate injury such as a broken leg. Now imagine that when you go to the doctors, you're told that there is a long wait list of people with more severe injuries and people who have the same severity of injury as you, but were had just on the wait list before you. And you now have to wait until all of them are treated before it's finally your turn to get treated. And imagine being told that this could take months to years, and this entire time you are just expected to deal with your injury. My name is Logan Cathcart, and I've done some research on free healthcare and what it all entails. Free healthcare currently is a mixed market within the United States, with some of it being free market healthcare and some of it being universal government provided healthcare. The two sides of the healthcare debate are those that are pushing for completely free market healthcare and those that are pushing for a single universal government provided free healthcare. A few key terms that I will be using today are health insurance, which can be used with healthcare and is just a way of paying for medical expenses, whether it be free market where you pay a company and then pay a deductible, and after that deductible they would cover the rest of your medical expenses, or the government would pick up the tab at the cost of some tax dollars. Healthcare should not be free, and the reasons healthcare should not be free are that free healthcare would reduce the quality of service, hurt the economy, and disincentivize people from becoming doctors. I will begin by talking about how free healthcare would degrade the quality of service. While talking about doctors and nurses, Napit stated that their goal changes into treating as many patients as possible instead of treating every patient properly and diagnosing them properly. When she says this, what she's talking about is currently doctors are in a setting where only a certain amount of people may come into a hospital, and they can thoroughly sit down and analyze every patient and make sure that they know what is going on with them. But in a situation where everyone is able to come into the hospital at any time, free of charge, this would overwhelm the hospital staff and force doctors and nurses to make quick and fast decisions about what is wrong with them and what the best treatment is, instead of creating personalized treatments for these people. This is one major drawback of free healthcare, and the other aspect of this is that when these places and hospitals become overwhelmed, it just becomes a backlog, and you don't know when people can actually be treated. And one example of this is recently with the coronavirus, and we all know that hospitals became overwhelmed for more than a short amount of time, and it was detrimental to those who were seeking health care. Aside from just decreasing the quality of service, free healthcare would also hurt the U.S. economy. According to ASPE's article, Effects of Healthcare Spending on the U.S. Economy, free healthcare can lead to companies resorting to layoffs to cover costs. When free healthcare comes around, it would hurt company payouts to its employees in a way that instead of just having to give them a certain amount of coverage, that company would then have to pay into the free universal healthcare prices, and they would have to make a decision on whether they could keep all of their employees while also paying into this healthcare or not. And if the company decides that they can't pay for all of their employees as well as the new healthcare prices, then they're going to either have to lay people off, or they will have to switch full-time workers who receive benefits to part-time workers that no longer receive benefits. And this decrease in workers and decrease in money from companies would overall result in a downward trend from the GDPE, one such as that was seen over this past year with the coronavirus, except analysts expect that it would be a worse drop, as not only companies would be overwhelmed by this new price change, but the overwhelming of the healthcare industry with all these new patients would also cause the lack of innovations and new creations, which would also hurt the GPE. Moving on to the one last reason why healthcare should not be free, I will briefly talk about how free healthcare disincentivizes people from being doctors. When free healthcare comes about, one of the biggest places that's going to take a hit is hospitals and healthcare institutes. These places will have to come up with cheaper ways of operating to make them more cost effective so that they can continue to operate with the now limited expenses, because these places are going to stop receiving, as Patra explains, they're going to stop receiving payouts for doctors completing surgeries, and this lower profit margin will make investors potentially leave this market. And this, along with stressed out doctors, which can once again be seen from the situations that they were dealing with in the coronavirus situation, would lead people to think that becoming a doctor after all of those years of schooling just to have cut pays due to free healthcare is just not worth it. Despite all of these reasons, there are those who argue that free healthcare should be a universal right to everyone. But as I've just stated, one major downside of everyone having healthcare with no cost is anyone can go into the hospital and just overwhelm the staff, which would just hurt healthcare overall. Would you want yourself or a loved one to have to wait a long time just to receive their treatments? Or would you want to just pay a little bit to make sure that you can be treated on time and effectively? When healthcare is made free, it degrades the service, it hurts the economy, and it disincentivizes people from becoming doctors. And even though some people say it is a basic right, the system becomes overrun and is just no longer as good as it used to be. When you go home, write or call your senators to make reforms to prevent free healthcare from becoming a government mandate. And don't forget that studies have shown that government-funded patients have worse access than privately funded hospital patients. That's all I have to say for today. So I will let all of you go, and I just want to thank you all for coming here and listening to me during this presentation.